Secretary of War at the State Department of the United States. We have a problem. The companies want something done about this sluggish world economic situation. Profits have been running more than a little thin lately, and we need to stimulate some growth. Now, we know that there's an alarmingly high number of young people roaming around in your country with nothing to do but stir up trouble for the police and damage private property. Doesn't look like they'll ever get a job. It's about time we did something constructive with these people. We've got thousands of them here, too. They're crawling all over. The companies think it's time we all sit down, have a serious get-together, and start another war. The president, he loves the idea. All those missiles streaming overhead, to and fro, napalm, people running down the road, skin on fire. The Soviets seem up for it. The Kremlin's been itching for the real thing for years. Want a little going-away present from Mr. Brezhnev. Hell, Afghanistan's no fun. So, what do you say? We don't even have to win this war. We just want to cut down on some of this excess population. Now, look, just start up a draft as many of those people as you can. We'll call up every last youngster we can get our hands on and give them an hour or two to learn how to use an automatic rifle. Send them on their way. El Salvador, Northern Ireland, or a modernly repressive regime in South America. We'll just cook up a good Soviet threat story in the Middle East. We need that oil. We had Libya all ready to go, and Colonel Gaddafi's hit squad didn't even show up. I tell you, that man is unreliable. The Russians had their finger on the button just like we did for that one. Just think for a minute. We can make this war so big. So big. The more people we kill in this war, the more the economy will prosper. We can get rid of practically everybody on your dole queue if we plan this right. Take every loafer on welfare right off our computer rolls. Oh, don't worry about those demonstrators. Just pump up your drug supply. So many people have hooked themselves on heroin and amphetamine since we took over. Just like Vietnam, we had everybody so busy with LSD they never got too strong. Kept the war functioning just fine. It's easy. We got our college kids so interested in beer, they don't even care if we start manufacturing germ bombs again. Put a nuclear stockpile in their backyard, they wouldn't even know what it looked like. So how about it? Look, war is money. The arms manufacturers tell me unless we get our bomb factories up to full production, the whole economy is going to collapse. The Soviets are in the same boat. We all agree the time has come to the big one. So what do you say?
It's marvelous.
That's excellent. We knew you'd agree. The companies will be very pleased.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk to you today about on the Feminist Media Review is a little bit about how our economy works. Can we get this a little sharper in there? Yeah, there we go. The charts here, and it'd be good if we had the whole thing, but it's kind of dim when you, there we go. Maybe about like that. That looks pretty good. You can see that what I've got here is an orange-haired, orange-faced figure and a Tomahawk missile made by Raytheon. And what I think it's important for us to know, Wargasm talked about, oh, there's all those idle young men out there who aren't working. We need to come up with a draft. We need to get them into, we need a war to improve our economy. So just to show you how it does work, Raytheon stock has been down a little bit, but when Trump, 45, decided to, over dessert and cake as after-dinner entertainment for his guests, decided to send some Tomahawk missiles to Syria and bomb an airfield. Then he sent the Tomahawks, and Raytheon stock went way up, and our president has stock in Raytheon. So not only did he make this decision over dinner to, impress his guest and to distract from some of his other problems, but he made some money on deciding to I think these Tomahawks, unfortunately I've forgotten the cost, but they're at least a couple of $1 million a piece. So Raytheon stock went zooming up the next day. President made money, and all the war hawks and all of the people in Wall Street, the people who's a minority of our country is actually invested in Wall Street, all were very happy, as they were on 9/11 when stocks went shooting up because of anticipating a war. Well, this country now really is about war as an economy, and it's pretty sickening. It's pretty sickening that we have a country that that depends on selling weapons, and we sell weapons to everybody. We sell weapons to people we know are highly likely to use them against us, but we don't care as long as we can keep selling weapons. We sell weapons to one of our favorite places besides Israel to sell them is Saudi Arabia, which is considered one of the greatest abusers of human rights in the world, but we're always happy to sell weapons to the Saudis and get some money from them. And of course, we sell lots of weapons to Israel, who use their might to dominate the Middle East and to continue their occupation of the Palestinians. I thought I'd read you some of the companies that are some of the biggest companies that profit from war. So here's our war profiteer list. We'll start with United Technologies, which is number 10 on the list. They do aircraft electronics and engines. They're 11.6 billion, total sales 58 billion, and gross profit 5.3 billion. And yet, I bet anything they pay no taxes and get subsidies from the government. They make the Black Hawk. L3 Communications is an electronics corporation. They're number 9 on the list. And their arms sales, 12.5 billion, 956 million profit. And their workforces aren't that big, 61,000. Here in Thimicana, aircraft artillery engines, electronics, vehicles, and missiles. Arms sales, 14.6 billion. Workforce, 70,000. EADS, Aircraft, Electronics, Missiles, and Space. They have a bigger than some of them workforce, 133,000, but none of these billions would make hugely larger numbers, about 5 times, I believe the University of Massachusetts has looked into how many jobs are created in other industries other than the military. The military tends to be extremely top heavy. All that money stays at the top. They don't employ that many people, but this kind of money could create 5 times the jobs in other industries like healthcare. Anyway. Number 6 on the list is Northrop Grumman, which is aircraft, electronics, missile, ship, space. Gross profit, 2.1 billion. Total workforce, 72,000. Raytheon, right in the middle here, number 5, making the Tomahawk. Gross profit of 1.9 billion. Again, guessing they don't pay a lot of taxes on that. They make the Tomahawk cruise missile, which is what Trump sent to Syria. He sent the other bomb, the father of all bombs, to Afghanistan around the same time. Just for what? I don't know. Testing it out, terrorizing the population. I mean, one of my favorite bumper stickers, which unfortunately I can't seem to get the Peace and Justice Center to reorder, says, "War is terrorism with a bigger budget." And that's really the truth. I mean, the idea that it's only terrorism if it's done with a homemade bomb and not, dropping bombs and taking drones and terrorizing children in Afghanistan and Yemen and so many other places. it's terrorizing and terrifying. Even the Hamid Karzai, who was once the president of Afghanistan, said it was absolutely shocking and terrorizing that the bomb they dropped on Afghanistan for what? To knock out some tunnels that they had put there that the U.S. had put there in the first place. Number 4 is General Dynamics, artillery, electronics, vehicles, small arms ships. And number 3 is BAE Systems, BAE, not your girlfriend or your boyfriend, but BAE Systems, aircraft, artillery, electronics, vehicles, missiles, ships. 29 billion in arms sales. Number 2 is Boeing, and with a 31.8 billion. Total sales 68.7 billion, gross profit 4 billion, total workforce 171,000. And Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is number 1 with a gross profit of 2.7 billion, total sales 46 billion. I also know that Lockheed Martin is number 1. There's intense fraud and corruption in all of these companies. The Pentagon can't account for trillions of dollars, literally trillions of dollars, that they don't even know how to begin to account for. And Lockheed Martin is number 1 in being the most corrupt and dishonest and fraudulent of all of the companies in the military-industrial complex, which is really saying a lot to head up that list of being the most fraudulent in a very fraudulent industry. And the other thing that I think is really relevant here, since we are in Burlington, Vermont, is that Lockheed Martin is the designer and manufacturer of the F-35, which most pilots think is a POS, piece of crap to fly, and don't want to fly it. It's not a very good plane. When they first got it built, no one could fly it because they couldn't see anything. So Lockheed, probably this was designed in by Lockheed, found out the solution to that was to make $1 million helmet so that they could operate the plane. Still not a lot of people who want to fly that thing. So Lockheed Martin has been making the F-35 for I don't know how long. I just read that it's going to be another cost overrun of $1 trillion. That was just like last week or something that I read that. I mean, and there's already been several cost overruns like that. So this is a horror that is part of our economy, and somewhat mystifyingly, although I think it, anyone who goes into our government swears fealty to the Pentagon and does whatever they say no matter what else happens, because it's really puzzling to me that Bernie Sanders, who I know, who I worked with when I spent 10 years working in City Hall as the head of the Women's Council, and Bernie's signature issue and City Hall's signature issue at that time was affordable housing. And yet here's Bernie supporting this piece of crap, F-35, to come to Burlington it makes 4 times the noise of the F-16s, and you've all heard the F-16s, and you know they're pretty loud and obnoxious as it is. Well, this thing, the F-35, makes 4 times the noise. The Dutch turned down their contract because they knew it would deafen people. But Patrick Leahy really wants this. He seems to think this is some part of his legacy, that we will have this horrible piece of crap plane here, a plane that can carry cruise missiles, a plane that is likely to be loaded with nuclear missiles right here in the most populous part of Vermont, and to displace up to 1,000 homes around the airport. A lot of, moderate income homes, low income, moderate income homes, the kind of thing that Bernie used to talk about all the time. That's, so important to have affordable housing. Well, here he is supporting a program that, trades in affordable housing for a piece of crap first strike, offensive, not defensive weapon. And our entire delegation is united on this. Peter Welch is for it. Patrick Leahy is so for it that when the Air Force came back and said this really isn't ecologically appropriate, they got calls from Senator Leahy saying, no, it is, and we want it here. And so it's going to be here, apparently no matter what the environmental impact study says, because Patrick Leahy wants it. He wants some, I don't know, I guess these guys all have to have some little military piece of hardware attached to their name, or they're not important enough, because you're really, the important thing is having a goddamn missile, right? I mean, important thing is killing people. That's what our economy runs on. That's what the United States is, and that is 60% of where your taxes go. So if you wonder why our schools are falling apart, our healthcare system is nowhere, and we don't have what every other developed country in the world has, a national healthcare service where everybody gets healthcare, and we have roads and bridges that are falling apart, and we are turning into, you know, the banana republics we used to laugh about, but now we are one. That's because all our money goes into missiles. All our money goes into weapons. All our money goes into Tomahawk missiles, cruise missiles, other missiles, missiles, F-35s that can't get off the ground. But I think the F-35 is a real case study. I mean, I think Lockheed Martin has come up with a big improvement for the military-industrial complex. I mean, previously there's always been huge, ridiculous, insane cost overruns, but often the hardware worked. In this case, you've got hardware that's a piece of crap, that doesn't work very well, that, as I said, many pilots don't want to fly, and it just never stops having cost overruns. But what could be better for Lockheed Martin? Something they can keep working on and keep working on and keep having cost overruns and never really deliver. I mean, you wouldn't deal with a vacuum manufacturer who was that bad, but our government will continue to deal with Lockheed Martin. You can bet on that, because you can bet that Lockheed Martin has plenty of lobbyists, and all those lobbyists have paid off all those guys, including, I don't know, probably all of our congressional delegation. These people spend massive amounts of money lobbying Congress, and, you know, as we've seen, as we saw the other day with the Republicans on the health care bill, I just saw a thing today that Joy Martin, who's on, I guess it's CNBC, MSNBC. Anyway, she has a news program, and she invited any one of the, I think it's 217 or 271, I can mix up the number, but a huge amount, right? That many Republicans, she invited any one of them to come on and defend the health care bill with her, have half the program, and not a one of them would come on. So you could see the courage they have. You can see the kind of really brave guys they are. So if you listened at all to the words of Wargasm in the beginning, I have to thank my son for letting me know who made that. Are we lighting up here like mad? All right, I'm going to take this call. Caller? Do you have something to say? No? Okay, no call. Sorry, I thought I had a call. Anyway, so they were talking there about, you know, there's a lot of idle men, and we need to and the economy's down, so we need some military adventures. And what has happened since then? That was, and when that song was made, they're referring to El Salvador. They're referring to the horrible support we gave the wars in Central America, and they do mention the Middle East in the end. Since then, we've had 9/11. Again, the stock market went up like crazy when that happened, so our investors were very, very happy about it. Since then, they've declared basically eternal war, a war that's never going to end, a war, constantly against the Middle East, this target, that target, whoever. And sometimes in the case of Syria, we actually have different branches of our intelligence agencies supporting different factions that are sometimes fighting each other. It's pretty crazy, but it does keep the main objective going, and the main objective being to keep war going so that all of these lunatic corporations like Lockheed Martin can keep making a fortune fleecing the American people. And the American people, unfortunately, respect the military more than any other institution in the country. And so all of that, false patriotism and what's the word? I can't remember the word right now for kind of false patriotism. But all of that military music and propaganda has worked very well on the American people. They think the military is important and the most respectable of our institutions, when it really isn't. And certainly I am not talking about, the individual who goes in because it's an economic draft but what it does and at this point, really, nobody should be joining this and going there. And you can bet that none of these one percenters or Wall Streeters who are so happy and, watch their stocks go up, and they're really happy their stocks go up, you can bet their children are not going to go out and fight these wars. No, yours are. This is a way to keep the low income. And back in the Reagan days, and just to bring some feminism into this, a friend of mine always noted that, I think it was George Gilder, who was this, great defender of patriarchy, and of course part of the Reagan regime, talked about the unemployed. And one of the things that he said was, if there's going to be unemployment, we want it to be women, because we don't want all that muscle and phallus out on the streets. So in other words, they have some fear of idle young men out on the streets. They don't have that fear about women, because women are generally peaceful. But possibly we should let them know we're not going to stand for what they're dishing out to us. And one of the things they're dishing out to us is endlessly, here's the budget this year, raising the amount of money for the military, lowering taxes for the very, very rich, and cutting all kinds of services and benefits and health care for your average person, and even more so for the low income and the poor, who, I think the goal of the Republicans for the poor is to kill them. I'm serious. They really would just as soon the poor die off, because they feel very virtuous, and they have said, some of the religious nuts that fill the Republican Party have said, God, the people that have illnesses and previous conditions that won't allow them to get health insurance have that because they live the wrong life. If they were doing things right, God would smile on them. So you should know that all your so-called Christian Republicans are behind the idea that if you got cancer, God was telling you you're living life wrong. God's telling them, by giving them a lot of money, that they're doing it all right. So their cruelty is just, I don't know how they put their cruelty together with their Christianity, but they have that prosperity Christianity, which says, if you're a good Christian, God's going to reward you with money. So very, very different than the Jesus I learned about, who I believe the one time he got really mad was at the money changers in the temple. Well, the money changers, the temple, and the military missiles. They're all one now. So one of the things you will find in the health care bill is lots of support for Viagra. No previous conditions there. Viagra will be supported. Women's health care, no. Rape, that's a previous condition. What else is? Acne, asthma, a lot of things that, and not only that, most of these conditions, for example, asthma. Asthma is really gone crazy in this country in the last bunch of years, in the last couple of decades, particularly for children. And why is that? That's because the rate of pollution in our air and our waters has gotten worse than ever. So as the pollution gets worse, the asthma goes up. So these guys, with their wonderful capitalist system, which has this great little trick thing in it. It's called externalities. So that means that a company like Raytheon, or I'm sure any of these military manufacturers create an awful lot of toxic material. Well, they can throw it in your river. They can throw it in your air. They can throw it in the soil. They can incinerate it and have you breathe it in the cities and give your kids asthma, and then you will have a pre-existing condition that they will not insure. So this is a really terrific system for the 1% and a few others just below them, where they never have to be accountable for essentially defecating in our rivers and air. They don't have to be responsible for that. You are. You pay the cost of that with your health and your money, and you sit there and say, hey, the military's good. We believe the propaganda. America's the most exceptional country in the world. And you keep buying this. We keep buying it. We keep paying our taxes. And those guys keep getting richer. And they're getting richer by killing people. They're getting richer in the most immoral ways possible. They're destroying the earth, and they're getting richer in really immoral ways. And yet, they talk about what Christians they are. And they like to put the only time they talk about morality is when they talk about abortion. And then they call themselves pro-life, which just really cracks me up because, I mean, their whole thing is death. It's all about death. The economy is all about death. It's all about death and killing and military. 60% of our budget, 60% of our taxes go to the military, which is, let's face it, the military is there to kill people. That's what it does. And it, these days, kills 7.5 civilians for every soldier killed, and that's just called collateral damage. So they're incredibly immoral. They base the economy on killing, and then they call themselves pro-life by shunting off morality to a few women, the few women who need to have abortions. That's the only thing that's considered to be morality. They can kill day in, day out. They can make a lot of money on killing and just call themselves Christians. And if that isn't the biggest hypocrisy that there has ever been, you know, Nero had nothing on these guys. Caligula had nothing on these guys. The Roman Empire had nothing on these guys.